After the success of the first Tremors movie, you just knew there was going to be a sequel. Directed by S.S. Wilson, who co-wrote the first movie, Tremors 2 has the challenging task of upping the ante, yet somehow keeping the story from falling into B-movie territory. So, were they able to pull it off? Let's see. It opens up with a guy shimmying on a pipe in an oil field. And we've seen that scared look before. He's being hunted by a graboid. It's not long before the ground starts to rise, and he's caught in a game of cat and mouse, where, in the end, the cat wins. It's a good way to start things off. You need something to grip the audience. There's no sense in hiding what the monster looks like, because we already know. You got my attention. Moving on. Now we head back to Perfection Valley, where we see Earl fighting with some ostriches to get him to mate. This is what he's done with all his money since the first movie. He bought an ostrich farm. But he's not very good at his job, because he's trying to get two males to mate. Female ostriches are smaller and more gray, but an honest mistake, Earl. Anyway, while he struggles, he gets a visitor, Senor Ortega, who works for an oil company in Mexico that's having a graboid problem.
Large underground animals. Graboids.
Ortega asks Earl to help him kill the pests, even offering $50,000 per graboid. But no amount of money can persuade him. Ortega pleads with him, saying that they've already reached out to Valentine, and he refused.
Sure, Val married a good woman. Why would he want to die?
Explaining why Kevin Bacon isn't in this movie. That's when Grady comes into play, the taxi cab driver who brought Ortega. He's an Earl Bassett super fan. After the events of the first movie, Earl and Valentine got their 15 minutes of fame, getting their pictures on the front of People magazine and National Geographic, just like they wanted. Earl even has a graboid arcade game, which, man, I would love to play that. He even has a wallpapered refrigerator. Wow, way to flaunt your wealth, I guess. Grady's having a hard time convincing him to go. Earl is adamant, and he even keeps a poster of Miss October 1974 on his wall to remind him to stop chasing your dreams. You're never going to get them. But persistence is key, and 50 grand is a lot of money. So reluctantly, Earl agrees to join him in the hunt.
You've got a deal. Bravo, bravo.
On their way to Mexico, Earl teaches Grady about rock, paper, scissors, the game him and Val used to always play to see who would get the short end of the stick. But you're telling me Grady's never played rock, paper, scissors? I thought that was a requirement for elementary school. Anyway, they get to the oil field office and meet the surviving crew. There's no one too important except for Kate Riley, the resident geologist and Earl's love interest. Ortega tells them that the Mexican government has supplied him with a ton of gear, and it looks like they're prepared, armed to the teeth with dynamite. He also mentioned that if they can capture one alive, they'll double the price from 50 grand to 100 grand. An interesting offer, but Earl knows that's gonna be impossible.
No, you never know. Earl, you never know.
Yes, I do.
That night, they go over the maps, where the graboid hotspots are, and so on. They also have a nifty device that's able to track the creature's seismic readings. So it looks like they have the advantage, at least more so than in the first movie. The next day, they head out and make it to where the graboids are supposed to be, which looks a lot different than what Earl's used to. There's not much rock or boulders to hide out on here. Even so, they have a job to do, and a plan to do it, which is actually a pretty good one. They strap some TNT to the back of a remote-controlled car, wait for the worms to take the bait, and then whammo! Graboid guts blown to kingdom come. The day goes on with a montage of them blowing up more and more worms. I count a total of 10, and that's $500,000. Not bad for a day's worth of work. But there are more out there. That night, they sleep under the biggest moon I've ever seen. Not much else happens here, I just wanted to point out the giant moon. In the morning, we see our first sign that the graboids are getting smarter to their plan. One grabs onto the chains on the truck and takes them for a ride, which Grady jokes is going to be the first ride in his graboid-themed amusement park he opens up. Sounds like fun. They take a look at their monitor and notice Earl's worst nightmare. More are coming. They're going to need to call in for some help. But who can they call? They need someone with just as much experience hunting these things. Val's out of the picture, and most of the other people living in perfection were killed in the first movie. So that leaves us with Bert. Get used to him. He's the only returning character in all 7 movies, which, honestly, good for him. Anyway, they call him up and learn that his life post-graboid attack has been pretty rough. He needs a constant threat of war at all times, and that's the reason why his wife, Heather, left him. So that explains why Reba isn't in this one. Hearing the news that the graboid's back is quite a surprise for Bert. But hang on just a minute. You didn't think I was gonna just brush past the fact that he's got one of the graboids that busted into his den, stuffed and mounted? That's awesome! How much would you have to pay for that? Fun fact, there's actually a guy who 3D printed this and mounted it in his living room. This guy's the real goat. Anyway, back to the oil field, and we see Kate doing research on some old fossils, and she just figured something out. One of these rocks has a fragment of graboid in them, meaning that these things were alive during the Precambrian era. Or in other words, they're one of the oldest living things from Earth, and not from space like Earl thought.
So they're from Earth, right?
Yeah.
Damn.
Just then the ground starts to shake, and it looks like a giant one is coming right for him. But no, it's not a graboid, it's just a well-prepared Bert, stocked to the teeth with everything he would ever want. And you can just tell this is Bert's happy place. There's nowhere else he'd rather be right now. So the two groups split up to cover more ground and blasting more worms. Eventually, one comes on the monitor, but this one seems different. It's moving away from them, so they decide to follow it. Is this some sort of plan the graboid has? Are they getting smarter? Well, they go in for the attack, but it's just lying there, crying out and almost looks sick. Definitely not attacking them.
I have no idea.
But you know what that means? They just captured one alive. 100 G's, baby. The only problem is they need to get it back and their truck got trashed. So they call in the oil company for another truck and wait. After it cries out for hours and hours, they decide to check on it, only to see it's dead. It looks like it's been eaten alive. But in 2 minutes, something doesn't add up. And that's when Earl figures out that it wasn't eaten, but something came out of it, like a caterpillar in a cocoon.
Only I bet that whatever came out wasn't no sweet little butterfly.
Lucky for them, it looks like their ride is here, but then it just stops. There's no other choice but to hike to the truck and see what happened, Earl carrying the monitor just in case. When they get close, they can see it's been trashed. Something attacked the engine and completely destroyed it. And the driver? Well, let's just say he's not going to be able to lend them a hand anymore. Well, actually, that's all he can give, I guess.
It's a whole new ball game.
The guys decide to hike to a radio tower and make a call for help. But when they get there, they can see that it too has been destroyed. Their luck does change for the better, however, when they find an old car. All they have to do is hotwire it, and then they can make their escape back to safety. But something big is coming. They prepare themselves for a fight, and here it is, the newest member of the graboid family, the shrieker. These guys obviously hunt above ground. They don't have ears or eyes, but instead use thermal vision based off heat. Luckily, they die pretty easily. A shotgun blast seems to do the trick, but more are coming. The guys get into the car and rush back to the main office. And meanwhile, while all that's happening, Bert decides to head back to base, not hearing from Earl and his own radio being out. As he goes, he has his own encounter with the new monsters, and he's left to fend for himself. In the morning, the guys make it back, but not before Ortega's attacked and killed. Kate hides out afraid, and that's when Earl comes to the rescue. They try to go, but they see they're too little too late because their engine's been destroyed too. Are these things smart enough to know that they need to take out cars? Well, maybe not. Inside, they get a second to think things over. they know that there was only 8 graboids left, and they estimate each one gives birth to 3 shriekers. They took out 3, so that means a total of 21 left. Just then, the building shakes, and they prepare for yet another attack. But, once again, it's just Bert. He made it through the night, but my oh my, what a fight it must have been. His truck torn to shreds, and he's all banged up. But at least he's alive. He explains that he ran some over, fought him hand to hand, and now he's completely out of ammo.
That's never happened to me before.
He's even managed to capture one of them alive. They roll the truck into the garage and cage up the living shrieker. But little do they know, one held on for the ride and is loose in the garage. With the one that they managed to contain, they're now able to perform some tests and figure out what they're up against. This is where they find out that it hunts by heat, thus why they were destroying car engines. They're not smart, they were just trying to get food. They also discover how these things reproduce. All they have to do is eat. That's right, no sex, really no waiting. As soon as they eat, they throw up a baby. Give these things a couple of Bert's MREs, and they could repopulate in no time. The one in the garage decides to attack, and we can see it's been pretty busy. The monsters are all over the property. They run to the safety of a building, only to find out that it's not done being built. Earl thinks quickly and hides behind a door, and they're able to sneak past him, the door covering up their body heat. This reminds me of the pole vaulting scene in the first movie, using tools to escape the monsters that are right in front of him. Their plan is to make it to the final remaining car on the property. The only problem is there's one in the way. That's okay. Bert has just one more bullet left, and it's a big boy. A really big boy. A really, really big boy. So now they're kind of screwed.
I didn't know. How could I have known?
At this point, the shriekers spot him, so they all go running. Earl, Kate, and Grady eventually all make it to a tall tower, and Bert has to hide out in a bulldozer. Good luck with that. Here they come up with a plan, and it's pretty easy. It's been a few days since anyone has contacted them from the outside world. Someone is bound to come looking for them, so all they have to do is wait. Easy enough, and now they have some time to kill. Earl and Kate get to talking, and well, wouldn't you know it, she confesses to being a playmate. Miss October 1974. Kate's the girl Earl has hanging on his trailer wall. But there's not much time to be excited about that, because the shriekers are getting smarter. They started building a ladder to get to our heroes. Thinking quickly, Bert gets their attention and leads them all to the garage, trapping them, which is good, until they realize the garage is full of food, and these things are multiplying like mad.
I didn't know! How could I have known?
Earl, once again thinking on his toes, comes up with a plan. They could use a fire extinguisher to cover up his body heat and basically be invisible to the monsters. He goes in to arm the bombs in Bert's truck, and while doing that, he starts to melt. The creatures see him, and they go into attack mode. Earl's friends manage to get him out of there, but it's out of the frying pan and into the fire. They just triggered all of Bert's explosives.
You what? No, no, no! Keep going! It's gonna be big! Big!
They hide out in a ditch and wait for the inevitable explosion. And boy, it does not disappoint. Debris and guts go flying everywhere. Earl and Kate hook up, and the Mexican government owes them for 28 worms, or $1.4 million. And that was Tremors 2 Aftershocks. Obviously, I would have liked to have seen Kevin Bacon and Reba McEntire return, but I do think Fred Ward was able to carry the movie by himself. Kevin Bacon and Reba were both originally written into the script, but couldn't commit to the roles. Reba was on tour for her music career, and Bacon was filming Apollo 13, which, I guess is arguably better than Tremors 2. Even so, I wonder what that movie would have looked like. Tremors 2 copied a lot of what worked in the first one. Grady is very similar to Melvin. They brought back the rock, paper, scissors game, and they kept up with the tradition of Earl always coming up with a game plan. The evolution of the graboids turning into the shriekers is pretty cool, and a good way to mix it up a little bit. I like the design of the creatures too, especially when they were using practical effects with the puppets, but even the CGI was passable for the time. Tremors 2 isn't bad, honestly, and a worthy sequel to the original one. Check it out. I give it 3 wallpapered refrigerators out of 4.
Man, he better keep quiet.
Yep.